Look, actually what you were talking about, the work experience and the Dutch specialists who came here. Yes, that's interesting. What did they teach you? And what did we teach them? Maybe they can learn from you now.
Well, actually, if we go back to the history of the Soviet era back then, they awarded heroes of socialist labor for 40 tons per hectare. As an example, the farm that came there in Rogachevsk had 3 heroes of socialist labor. They produced about 40 tons per hectare and became heroes of socialist labor. So that experience was based on the foundation and base that existed back then. Those seeds, some technological things. So we just didn't know anything else. That's how we were all taught. And accordingly, by the end of the 90s, it wasn't the agricultural workers who started pushing the potato topic, but it just happened that probably one of those who really started to see potatoes as a business in Russia was Alexander Mikhailovich Chwenko, because he was doing it then. Laboratories of growing mini tubers. So one. From that, from those tasks that were set in this research, and it turned out that they grew mini tubers and nobody bought them. This was in the 90s, and these first mini tubers arrived in Sapa, in Sargachevsk, and they were planted then. So, at one of the exhibitions, Alexander Mikhailovich Chwenko met Alan Parker. At that time, or shortly after, he became the chairman of the World Potato Congress. And he became very interested. They bought this setup in Canada, and through those partnership relations, he also became interested in Russia. So they started in Saha. In Jose Rogachevsky back then, they planted the first hectares of these mini tubers, that is, in 93, if I remember correctly. And they started growing potatoes just like they did in Canada. So it's a completely different level, a different approach, a technological one, and accordingly, just a couple of years later, Chwenko saw that in principle, potatoes could be a business, potato production. So basically at that moment, probably seriously, nobody was doing this at all in Russia. And this experience when they started working with potatoes actually allowed for the effect. This training, many to watch, to learn, and to start, they started entering this business as a business. Well, practically, this period lasted probably almost until the end of the 90s.
So, was the company Valmix founded in 2011?
Well, yes. So I came to Chwenko in 2002, that is, I was there as the general director until 2008. I came to Rogachevsky as an executive director, then as a general director, then I became the general director of educational technologies in Rogachevsky. So basically after Kaluga, when I came from Kaluga, and exactly, that experience, the attitude towards business, the understanding of all these processes actually gave me a lot, Docs. And then, after it was time to part ways with Doc, well, probably most people go through that period when those who start a business, make it successful, have to leave. And this also affected me in the same way. So I left in 2008 from of educational technologies and went to crisis management. So back then, Potanin and Proko bought the land, and accordingly there was land and we didn't know what to do with it. That is, the task was set. It's very simple, quite interesting in the sense that we won't give you any money. Here's the land, here's some asset. If you can, try to make a profit. That is, in 3 years at the Sovkhoz Rasvet, in principle, from a deeply unprofitable enterprise, we already made a profit the following year, and in 2 years, already the profit was around 35 million.
What year was that?
That was back in 2010.
I have a question like this. And what was the price of potatoes in 2010?
In 2010, well, probably around 10 rubles.
Well, you know, we often hear that the price of potatoes in 2024, 2025 is very high. It has increased several times. And if you compare it to 2010, with the costs you had in 2010 and 2000.
Overall, last year was interesting when commercial potatoes cost 10 rubles, exactly the same as they did in 2002. That's 1-to-1 in price, but the costs have increased significantly by an order of magnitude. So if we talk about potato farming today and in 2010, back then you could really become very, very rich from potato production in just 1 year. Well, there you go. You could become very, very rich from potato production in just 1 year. And really, in fact, there were both opportunities and a very big problem. Because at that moment, for example, in the Dmitrovsky district, a lot of farmers became very successful because they saw this successful experience, good experience in production. Actually, let's say in the Dimitrov district, I might have lied a little bit in the sense that the very first were these 4 Dutch farmers who came to the Dimitrov district, and that was probably the end of the 80s, so it was already the exact experience of one. That is, they saw how they were engaged in production of commercial potatoes in Europe. Then Alan Parker appeared, so that kind of overlapped. So the Dimitrov district actually became the driver that allowed us to look at this business differently.
They asked about the Russian potato market, how the potato market has changed over the year. Valentin has passed more than 30 years. So what kind of score are we talking about?
I was involved in potato farming in Kaluga.
How many years have passed?
I started getting into potatoes in 1988. 1988 year?
Years. That's already almost 40, yes, since the 80s. Almost 40 years. How has the attitude changed overall? You are currently involved in your business with seed potatoes. The attitude towards seed potatoes and how the structure is changing, that is, right now, processing is developing very actively. Yeah, and probably there's this youth word hype. Everyone wants seeds for processing. Given your experience, can we be cautious? And don't give in to this too much. The popularization of seed companies for processing, or in your company's package, what is the percentage ratio of seeds processing and seeds for the table market?
Now more than 50% is processing. So this is actually not just hype. This is exactly the direction of development that it exists, and it will continue to exist. It will develop more, because I remember those times in the early 2000s when Alan Parker said, you won't even notice how it happens at home. They will stop planting potatoes in the fields. And we went through this. Literally in 5 to 6 years, we saw that this became rare. It will shrink at home. Considering this global experience, housewives no longer want to wash potatoes. They prefer pre-washed potatoes. And today's youth, they don't even want to cook anymore. So there's no other way when it comes to processing, meaning for table varieties. It's clear that there are chips, there are French fries, but also potatoes that are ready as semi-finished products. There's just no other way, and this trend will be driven by the consumer properties of potatoes, meaning what's convenient for processing and even cooking. Well, but we can't escape from ready-made semi-finished products. In America and Europe, a large portion of potatoes, probably about 80-90%, is processed. And we are moving in that direction too, and accordingly there's no other way.
Valentin, you've been involved with potatoes for almost 40 years now. I have the following question. Up until now, what did you dream of doing? If not potatoes, what would you be doing? What was your dream? What did you want to do?
Here's a question about potatoes. Actually, I was born in a village. My mom is a housewife and my dad is a tractor driver. So I probably only wanted to be that until the 7th grade. A cartographer. I wanted to enroll in Leningrad back then. Naval School for Ice Reconnaissance and Cartography. So then there were problems with my eyesight. I burned my eyes, and then I realized that I wouldn't be a military man anymore, and then I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. I will work in agriculture because I probably didn't know how to do anything else and didn't want to. So 20. At 23, I became the director of an agricultural enterprise for the first time, still a kid right after college. And accordingly, I've been doing just that my whole life. Exactly just that. And actually, so over all these many years working as a leader, I guess there were some in my life. No more than a couple of times when the farm ended up in the red at the end of the year, because that is, in fact, it's probably this peasant mentality, which means you always need to live by your goals and set only those that you can realistically achieve with some effort. So, I've worked my whole life in this mode, and this experience, which after the Precambrian technologies, I did it for myself. I took a pay cut, but there was an interesting task, which was, can you, on refined production, get it back on its feet pretty quickly? Actually, that's what pushed me later on, already understanding that if you can do it for other people, well, I don't know what to say. If you can do it for other people, then why can't you do it for yourself? So back in 2011, a decision was made that you'll have it soon. You'll be considered uninteresting because of your age, and you need to start something, because if you want to achieve something, that's why in 2011 this Valmix topic started, especially since I met a person who was then involved in production consulting. At that time, many people were buying land, and they didn't know what to do with it. And I worked on several projects specifically from the perspective of a practitioner bringing the landowners up to speed. There were quite influential people, and I wasn't afraid to say that their desires and wants were misguided. And there were two projects where I suggested that if you don't want to deal with it yourself, it's better to sell it. So after the person didn't even listen, this was a residential project. He invested quite a bit of money. Then, a year later, he invited me to a meeting in Moscow and said, I didn't listen. I invested another 10 million, and I had to sell at a big discount. So, well, he was a big guy. And that's when I also met Mikhailovich Yaroshevsky on this topic. So he really bought the land and didn't know what to do with it. And then the topic came up. One of the suggestions was you could get into something like potatoes, because it's a quite profitable crop. And considering that we are not in the south, where from the perspective of economies of scale, you can do grain projects. Are there any oilseed crops to develop in the central region? He had land in the Kaluga region, my homeland, not far from me, and right now I'm only focused on potatoes. And well, it was necessary to invest there. He only started thinking about it a year later, and then he asked me, but why you? If you can do everything well there, why don't you start your own business? So, well, first of all, even being a director, I was there. To even start in agriculture, I hadn't saved up any money. It was impossible to accumulate anything. I don't want to, and I won't. And for me, he offered a year later, do you want to cook if you want? So we can do 50-50. I can invest the startup capital. That will be my share, and you will implement this project. So we started in 2011. So basically, we then had two topics from the very beginning that we were working on. Where should we go? The first one is ecology. So, and to focus on this niche, and the second topic was seed production. But considering that we then correctly assumed that we won't have a middle class anytime soon, who will be interested in that? And there are volumes. We tried this topic as well. We have certified land there. It's in the Kaluga region. We went through the process. We certified it and tried to sell it. It's a little shop. So we realized that this is, well, not popular in Russia yet. And what exists is actually pure lies. I mean, it won't happen anytime soon. And the second topic was seed production. It was clear to me, I understood it even back in the precognitive technologies when we first started working with Markin, when he was considering whether to enter or not. That was in the early 2000s. Then Pepsi came along, which started developing the project. And we, in principle, were the first suppliers. Seeds for Pepsi, that is the first 10,000 tons. I remember when Chwenko came with this project that we have 10,000 tons for Pepsi. We can produce seeds. He said that we are there completely. 10,000 tons of seeds. But actually, a year later, we produced 10,000 tons for them. So Trenko, he always reacted very well to some new beginnings. I can only speak of him with gratitude. Alexander Mikhailovich is definitely a person who feels this business, and he knows how to grab the grain and move it, and so accordingly when we started. Here with Valmix, we had the task of becoming a seed company, and we spoke about it openly without any hesitation. From the first year, many well-known big companies today, their leaders and owners said, yeah, who will buy this from you? Because it's easier for us to bring it from Europe. That's how it was with quite well-known people today in the potato business. But we said, guys, in 5 years, you'll be buying from us. Damn, it's been years. They started buying potatoes accordingly, so over these 10 years, we practically, well, it was like this, seeds, commercial potatoes, every year the volume. The share of commercial potatoes was decreasing while the share of seeds was increasing. Again, we were the first who weren't afraid. We had an unsuccessful experience with Makino who didn't show up in the early 2000s. Again, we were the first in 2016 to plant innovator crops for industrial processing for seeds. So there were no factories or anything yet. Then the company appeared. White Dhaka? No, it was. Then yes, White Dhaka was. Then it was called. There's the Kislovodsk Battle Garden. No, the lower one. I'll tell you what the name of that company was, so they wanted to enter the Russian market, farm riders. Yes, the file is streeters. And accordingly, they brought in innovator seeds. And there was Dutch consultant. I don't remember his last name, but he was really good, the one who actually knew this topic. From the very first year, we really got rid of the virus completely. This innovator yields almost 30 tons of seeds per hectare. Without using herbicides, because we were preparing for this, we prepared the field with seeds, and they didn't come to the market. For some reason, then White Dhaka appeared. So in the first year, we grew these seeds. We didn't know what to do with it. So they were like table seeds that nobody needed, but they did pay under the contract and said to do whatever you want, choose if you want, right? We didn't throw away those seeds. We distributed them through a wrap delay, gave them to whoever needed them. Then White Dhaka appeared, and right away they came to us saying, let's grow the innovator so you have experience, especially with failures. Yeah, and basically right away, probably the very next year, we already had the innovator, and since 2016 it hasn't been interrupted even once. Although it's not the most profitable product here, but it allows you, well, it allowed you to build those good relationships there on this topic, and accordingly, what the company, Vifra, likes today is that, but everyone still has a long way to go. Before that, they had very high quality logistics. Yeah, they really stick to their commitments. So, for seed production, especially when it's large, we still produce quite a lot of seeds. These are clear shipping schedules. This is one of the biggest problems we have today. You can have more, you can, but it's better not to, because there are two problems. The question is to keep it clean enough in the field. And the second problem is just one. This logistics of shipments, because you need to ship everything you've produced, practically ship it all in almost 2 months. And accordingly, it's very, very difficult. We were restacking, and accordingly, companies like VFRY, when everything is clear, when everything that was agreed upon is fulfilled, it's done day by day. And in terms of money and deadlines, it's expensive. That's why we feel very comfortable working. We're always going for something, a new variety. Let's give it a try. So right now they're bringing us another variety, something there. They're trying, so we've already started multiplying in the lab. That's why then the popsicle appeared. So if we talk about it as a seed company, this is from the very beginning. So we went to the Hanover exhibition and visited all the seed companies there. In 2012, and how we got packed, and with whom would we make friends, joint production. So we are ready to grow seeds for you in Russia for Russian consumers. And the first company that responded there was Noriko. So we've practically been friends with Noriko since 2012. So we started growing seeds for them. And for the first 5 years, we were also sellers of these seeds. We were
promoting the Noriko product. So Gala, did it rise on your shoulders in terms of difference?
Well, it was already there before us. So it was already there. So from 2012 to 2017, we practically had licenses by then, and which is about potato and cream. Not that we are those, but we have a direct contract for production with Noriko. That's where it all started. So we were their official partners in Russia for 5 years who, well, because they sell their potatoes. So if everyone knew about Gala back then, everything else went through our hands. The same goes for Vega, Baltic Rose, and Merlot before that. All the varieties that Noriko tried to promote here, they all went through our hands. That is, accordingly, everyone knew Gala already then. Everything else was practically us. Now they are the sellers themselves, but everything has changed. This is the dialectic of development.
Valentin, February 2025. What does the company Valmix represent?
Today, we have reached the point in potato seed production that we wanted. Accordingly, the potato production volume is 500 hectares. In my opinion, this is the maximum volume. Might even be a bit too much for a seed production company. And the European experience shows that this is a very large company. So, in terms of seed production, we have reached the area of the volume that we wanted. This allows you to enter investment program to do things, to improve. We won't be growing any further, definitely. So, what I would like to discuss today is, roughly what is our share in seeds certified? Probably around 7 to 8, or maybe around 10 years. So, are we going to proceed accordingly? The task is what we are today. We purely a seed production company that is engaged in seed production. A little over 50% is industrial processing for the two leading companies, Vipri and Pepsi, and table potatoes today it is Norica and AGPC, Alsado. Canteen's share in small amounts is decreasing, not because we want it, but because of the issue of very tough competition. So today the price for the same table potatoes is already at the seed level. For us, it's less than industrial processing. And this is related to the not entirely correct policies of the seed companies regarding table potatoes, when they thought that each of them was the smartest in increasing the volume. The seed offers, and they pushed out the others. Everyone thought exactly the same. Last year came when there was an oversupply of these seeds, and the seeds were given away for pennies. And this year it's affecting table potatoes. Today, their price is lower than that of industrial processing, accordingly, and volume. The desires of the seed companies. There's no more room to plant table potatoes. So we have exactly, that is, in terms of volume, we have come to the point that today is the most important. Our goal and task, which we communicate to our employees and discuss with our partners, is that we want to produce consistently good quality. Let it not be, this is the biggest hype, but consistently good. So that there aren't these projects where today is good, tomorrow a little worse, a little better. For us, stable quality is important. Accordingly, we started a laboratory project. We have had the laboratory for 3 years now. Last year, we built a greenhouse complex. Today we are producing 500,000 mini tubers. We are meeting our needs with the varieties that are required there. It's clear that this is just the beginning of the project. That is, in the next couple of years, We want to bring everything up to a good standard, but for now, we are at the beginning of the journey. Accordingly, we will be focusing on this, that is, a quality laboratory, a proper assessment of the varieties, proper work in the field to achieve our volume, today's volume of quality seeds. Accordingly, there is always an opportunity to increase both revenue and production profitability by producing higher quality products and higher reproductions. Actually, it was very nice last year when we produced 2,300 tons. Super elite Zinniera with a new virus. This allowed us to sell 2,300 tons, which accounted for 50% of the revenue because it was 7,500 tons. What we sold was less than 300.
That's really actually wonderful.
And that's why we're here. We actually want to be very stable. So accordingly, there were problems, and we solved a big problem in the 24th year.